Hi, this is Pastor Ann Holquist from Augustana Lutheran Church in Denver, and I am grateful that you are able to join me today for this one-on-one on a snowy but sunny Tuesday here in Denver, Colorado. As you can see, I am in our Augustana sanctuary this afternoon. This past Sunday, our opening hymn was "Come You Faithful, Raise the Strain," a very well-known Easter hymn. The second verse says, "'Tis the spring of souls today, Christ has burst his prison, and from 3 days' sleep in death, as a sun has risen. All the winter of our sins, long and dark, is flying from the light to whom we give laud and praise undying." Well, if you live here in Denver, you might just be wondering where that spring of souls or spring is today. As usual, here in Colorado, spring comes with snow, not rain. And we got quite a lot of it last night, including the fact that it started with ice. That made life interesting for everyone this morning. Unless your daffodils and hyacinths and others were covered last night, they are pretty well frozen now. I suspect that birds and rabbits and dogs and cats and all sorts of other urban animals are probably wondering, what happened to the spring? What happened to the spring? For a while there, all that we had was sunshine and warmth, and you could see the green leaves and the green grass, and there's a sense, isn't there, in springtime that there is a hope for what will be. That question, what happened to the spring, seems to me like a good metaphor for perhaps the last 14 plus months. We've ridden the roller coaster about the pandemic. It's getting better. No, it's not. There will be another surge. Here it comes. The vaccine is here. Yay. Oh no, there are some problems. All of that in addition to whatever we have all faced with our work and our families, our mental, physical health, and the politics and the culture that surround us. Many times it has felt that the hope of spring, that hope for a new beginning, is far away. Even now with vaccines available and quote unquote normal life on the horizon there, it's safe to say that each of us also still carry our worries and burdens, and the feeling that one person has expressed so well in writing, life is just so daily, isn't it though? Sometimes we all live through seasons of life, don't we? When it seems like there just won't be any spring, or at least we can't see it, we can't feel it. We do know that Easter good news that's expressed in that opening hymn that we had this past Sunday, that because of Christ, death, pain, sorrow, suffering will never have the last word. But sometimes we need to hear, we need to see that familiar hope in new ways. For me, those new ways usually revolve around poetry and music. Not that our hymnody in our worship don't include both of those things, but sometimes I need the words spoken by a particular poet, or perhaps some different kinds of music that help me to discover that Easter hope again. I think sometimes in poetry, at least for me, there can be expressions of faith, of hope, of wonder of the natural world that just, for me, take my breath away. Not by some kind of preaching or by an obvious witness, but through the words and how the person crafts them to describe the experience that we all have as human beings. One of my absolute favorite poets is Mary Oliver. Many people I know share the love for her poetry over the years. She died a few years ago and left behind quite a legacy of poetry and of reflections on what it means to be alive in the gift of this created world that God has made. She was a very interesting person, quite reclusive in a way. She granted very few interviews and wasn't really interested in that kind of a public persona at all. She won the Pulitzer Prize for poetry in the early 90s. And she's somebody who was raised in the Christian faith and then felt rejected in some ways by that faith and by that community. And so it was only later in her life that she came back to a very deep liturgical Eucharistic faith in the Episcopal Church. And as I said before, she doesn't preach about that faith in her poetry. She finds ways to write about it with this beautiful way that she has with crafting words. For some poets of the 20th and 21st century, they were very put off by her faith. But I think for many of us, we can find a lot of hope and grace and also affinity with the things that she writes. And so in thinking about that question, what happened to spring? I want to share with you a poem that she wrote in the early 90s that is called Poppies. And just listen for the imagery that she uses that really is Easter imagery, although it's not preached, but just written in a beautiful way. Here's what she writes. The poppies send up their orange flares, swaying in the wind. Their congregations are a levitation of bright dust, of thin and lacy leaves. There isn't a place in this world that doesn't sooner or later drown in the indigos of darkness. But now, for a while, the roughage shines like a miracle as it floats above everything with its yellow hair. Of course, nothing stops the cold, black, curved blade from hooking forward. Of course, loss is the great lesson. But also I say this, that light is an invitation to happiness, and that happiness, when it's done right, is a kind of holiness, palpable and redemptive. Inside the bright fields, touched by their rough and spongy gold, I am washed and washed in the river of earthly delights. And what are you going to do? What can you do about it? Deep blue night. It's really a beautiful meditation on what it means to live spring and Easter hope. We've been offering these one-at-one devotions for about the last 14 months since we first went into the lockdown in March of 2020. And now as we move towards a more normal life together as a congregation, these one-at-one devotions will be coming to an end at the end of this month in April. You may know, or you will know soon, that we will begin offering outdoor worship at 8 o'clock in the morning in the courtyard on Sunday, May 2nd. And you'll be asked to register to attend that worship service along with some of the similar conditions that we had last summer. And so look in the epistle and also in the tower that's coming out in May for ways to register to attend that worship. And then also want to just give a little hint that indoor worship opportunity at 10:30 is also coming. And so you need to watch for details in the electronic epistles and also in the Tower newsletter. And both those opportunities will be wonderful times for us to gather together again, to see one another face to face, or, well, almost face to face, mask to mask sometimes, at least for the near term. And so we look forward to that time to gather together to worship. I want to say a special word of thanks to all the staff that have participated in these one-at-ones, Pastor Caitlin, Shanna, Daniel, and Sue Ann. We know that you all have enjoyed having this connection with us, and we have enjoyed it as well. And we want to thank all of you for connecting with us on this twice weekly basis or whenever you had a chance to connect with us. We've enjoyed it so that even in these times when we haven't really been able to be together, we have been able to feel connected, and we have been able to share with you some of the thoughts and hopefully some of our own personal faith as you've experienced these one-at-ones with our staff members. So what I would like to close by saying is that definitely Christ is risen, and we are in this wonderful, wonderful Easter season together. We have this hope, and that hope tells us that Christ is with us, and that spring, with all its hope, is still coming in so many ways. Thanks for joining me today for One-at-One. God bless your day.